Good morning, everyone. How's it going today? Today, we're going to be taking a look at DeepSeek and their new models. Now, in case you're not familiar with DeepSeek, they are this very important AI company from China that basically started the open source revolution for the large language models back in 2025 with the release of R1. And they just released two new models on Friday called DeepSeek V4 Pro and DeepSeek V4 Flash. So today we're going to be taking a look at these models and see how good they are and how they compare to GPT-5.5 from OpenAI and the model behind Claude, which is Opus 4.7. And we're going to be breaking everything down very simply so that if you do not have any background on this, you will also be able to follow. So first of all, we're going to see what is DeepSeek and what it is so important. Second, we're going to be taking a look at the benchmarks to see how good this model is compared to other state-of-the-art models. Third, we're going to be taking a look at the pricing to see how much more affordable this model is compared to GPT and Opus. And fourth, we're going to be actually installing it on the Pi agent. So without any further ado, let's actually get right into it. All right, so first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about what is DeepSeek in case you're not familiar with it. DeepSeek is this incredibly influential AI company from China that has been releasing incredible models for the past few years. And they probably started what you might call the open source revolution for large language models with their release of DeepSeek R1. Now, DeepSeek R1 was a model they released back in 2025 in January, and that moment is usually called the DeepSeek moment because it taught the world that, first of all, open source is incredibly powerful and is capable of competing to the state-of-the-art closed source models, and second, that you can train super powerful models on a much lower budget than what OpenAI or Anthropic were spending. So it was an incredible moment, and it basically started this wave of open source AI companies that have become incredibly powerful and incredibly popular right now. This same company just released two new models last week, which are DeepSeek V4 Pro and DeepSeek V4 Flash. And these are, just like the previous models, mixture of experts models, which means that they are huge, massive models, but that on every request, only a few parameters are actually active, which makes it much faster. And just to complete the tour of DeepSeek, they have their own, of course, ChatGPT-like application that you can just access like this and talk to, just like you would talk to ChatGPT. And of course, they also have their models available on an API, so you're able to query them directly through your coding assistant, which is what we're going to be doing in a moment. So now that we know a little bit more about DeepSeek, let's actually take a look at how this model is actually comparable to other models and see how much more convenient it is to use this because, of course, it is much more affordable. So let's take a look at that. All right, so now let's take a look at some benchmarks. Benchmarks are basically just the way that we measure how good a model is compared to other models. And in this case, I'm going to be using three different kinds of benchmarks. So the first one is coding benchmark. So we have three different benchmarks on this side. We're also going to be taking a look at general reasoning benchmarks. And thirdly, we're going to be taking a look at agentic benchmarks, okay? So let's start off with the coding benchmarks. Now, the first one that I want to show you is this one right here, which is Terminal Bench. Now, Terminal Bench is a benchmark that measures how good a model is at using the terminal or the command line to solve problems. And this is, of course, very important because this is going to be the primary way for any coding assistant to interact with your file system and to actually build your applications or explore your files or solve your coding issues. So as you can see, DeepSeek V4 Pro is pretty good, and it sits at a very similar score to Claude Opus 4.7 and Gemini 3.1 Pro. And it's right here just a little bit above Kimi K2.6 and above also GLM 5.1 and Minimax M2.7, which are the beautiful open source models that were released in the past few weeks. The second benchmark that we can take a look at is SWE-Bench Pro. Now, in case you're not familiar with this one right here, this is a benchmark that measures how good a model is at solving GitHub issues. So the model is given a set of very complicated GitHub issues, and the model has to reason across multiple files and edit multiple files in order to solve the problems. And then we measure their performance, and as you can see right here, it actually scores even better than GPT-5.4, just a little bit below the new GPT-5.5, below Claude Opus 4.7, and above Gemini 3.1 Pro, and about at the same level as Kimi, GLM, and Minimax, which is also a great result. Now let's take a look at general reasoning benchmarks, and these are benchmarks that measure how good a model is at solving problems that are not necessarily about coding or software engineering. So we have GPQA Diamond and MMLU Pro, and both of these are sets of questions that measure how good a model is at multiple disciplines such as physics, chemistry, biology, etc. And these are questions authored by people with PhDs. And as you can see, we have a very competitive model with DeepSeek V4. We have that it is just a little bit below the closed models, and it is just about the same as Kimi K2.6, and we have similar results with MMLU Pro. Same thing, very similar benchmark to GPQA Diamond, okay? And one of my favorite benchmarks, actually, probably because of the name, is Humanity's Last Exam. Let me actually show to you what it is. It is supposed to be a super difficult benchmark that compiles a lot of different questions by only top experts in their field. And just as the other two, it is not only about software engineering, it involves very complicated disciplines such as classics, ecology, mathematics, computer science, linguistics, chemistry, etc. And of course, it is very complicated, and it is very fun to read the questions that they have right here. If you want to take a look, of course, the link is in the description. But something very interesting about this specific benchmark is that models tend to perform very, very badly compared to the other benchmarks that we have, which are pretty much topped with models reaching levels like 90 out of 100 or things like that. Whereas in Humanity's Last Exam, models are usually pretty bad at it. So we have DeepSeek V4 scoring 37.7, which is slightly above Kimi, but a little bit below the other state-of-the-art models that we have right here. And finally, let's take a look at the agentic benchmarks, which are also very, very important, which are essentially benchmarks that measure how good a model is at using multiple tools. So we have MCPAtlas, first of all, and Toolathlon. Both of these measure how good a model is at using tools and chaining tool usage in order to solve problems. And as you can see, DeepSeek is very high. It scores above GPT-5.4, above Gemini 3.1 Pro, and Kimi K2.6, and also above GLM 5.1. Only GPT 5.5 and Claude Opus 4.7 beat it. We have similar results with Toolathlon, with Claude Opus getting a ridiculously high score, and on BrowseComp, which is a benchmark that measures how good a model is at finding information across multiple websites, basically how good it is at performing research. But in order to perform that research, it has to make multiple calls, research multiple websites, and absorb a lot of information, okay? And as you can see, it is also right here very close to GPT 5.5, GPT 5.4, and Gemini 3.1 Pro, and even above Claude Opus 4.7. And same thing, it is right here, right there with Kimi and GLM. And I couldn't find the score for Minimax for this one in particular. But as you can see, DeepSeek is basically a state-of-the-art model that will perform, in most cases, better than GPT 5.4 and a little bit below GPT 5.5, which is not too much of a problem because GPT 5.4 was already amazing to me. And just for the record, these statistics right here, I posted them on Twitter. So if you want to find out more similar statistics and more information about latest models, feel free to follow me on Twitter. Now let's take a look at pricing, because that is where things become very interesting, because we have a model that is super powerful, very comparable to the other closed source models, but which is way more affordable. So let's see that. All right, now very quickly, let's talk about the pricing right here. And as you can see, it is a surprisingly affordable model. When compared to GPT 5.5 and Opus, as you can see, it is one of the most affordable premium models. It starts at $1.74 per million input tokens and at $3.48 per million output tokens. That is ridiculously more affordable than GPT 5.5, Opus 4.7, and also Gemini 3.1 Pro. And as you can see right here, open models are usually the most affordable ones as well. So it's just crazy between open models and closed source models that we have right here. It's just ridiculous. And on top of that, I think that right now DeepSeek is actually having a sale where they have, I think, like 90% off their tokens, which is just crazy. Yeah. So 75% off, which makes it even more affordable up until May the 5th. So yeah, definitely a great moment to try it out. What we're going to be doing today, however, is not going to be using their own API. We're going to be serving it through Hugging Face. So let's see how to do that and how to connect it to the Pi agent. All right, so in order to test it out, we're going to be using the Pi agent harness, which is just a beautiful name. And it's also a very beautiful agent harness. It's very minimalist. And you can think about it as sort of a version of OpenCode, but in a minimalist version. So what it does is basically, in order to install it, you're going to copy this and paste it into your command line. And after that, you're going to be able to do Pi and Open Pi like that. And it is very straightforward. It became very popular, especially because it is not only an agent harness that you can use as a coding assistant, but it is also one that you can use as an SDK in order for giving agentic capabilities to your application or to building a larger, more sophisticated agent. And that is precisely what happened with OpenClaw. So OpenClaw uses Pi as its agent harness, which is something very, very beautiful. So as I was telling you, it is an agent harness that is very minimalist. It comes with not many features out of the box, so you can build your agent harness yourself. So all you have to do is ask Pi to build itself or to implement a new feature into itself, and it will do it because it has the skills to do it, and it is very, very beautiful and very straightforward. So I encourage you to install it. All you're going to have to do is copy this, and then you will have Pi installed. And once that is done, in order to use DeepSeek, there are two ways to do it. The first one is to serve DeepSeek V4 Pro from the official API of DeepSeek. So you're going to go to deepseek.com, then you're going to go to Access API. You're going to create an account, top it up with a few dollars, and from here, you're going to get your API keys. And right here, you're going to do /login. You're going to log in with an API key. You're going to search for DeepSeek, and then you're going to be able to use it like that. I like to have access to a lot of different models at the same time, so I use it directly straight from Hugging Face. So what I do is also do login. That is the second way of doing this. So I'm going to go to login, also with an API key, and I'm going to go to Hugging Face. Now, I have already done it, but once you do this, it is going to ask you for your API key. So all you're going to have to do is to href.co. Right here, you're going to go right here to your account. In it, you go to access tokens, and then just create a new token right here. You give it access to make calls to inference providers. You give it a name, just save it, and then you just copy that and paste it right here. Okay. So after you select it, of course. So in my case, I have already set it up, so I'm not going to use it. So I'm not going to do it. But once you have done that, all you have to do is do /model and then search for DeepSeek. And you should be able to see DeepSeek V4 right here, straight from Hugging Face. Now, in my case, I am recording this very soon after the release. So it is not yet listed here, but it is already available on inference providers. So I'm going to show you how to, just like a piece of general trivia or general knowledge, how to implement a custom agent into Pi. So in this case, we're going to be using DeepSeek V4 Pro. I'm going to go right here into Pi. And since I don't see it right here, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to go to my user home, then .pi/agent. And right here, as you can see, I have a models.json file. Now this one right here, I'm going to have to edit it, and I am going to have to make it look like this. So basically what I did is I just added a few headers to make sure that I am billing to my organization instead of my personal profile. But I mean, this is only in case you're part of an organization. Else you can just pay it with your own tokens. And this is the important part right here. So I initialized the Hugging Face provider. I added a base URL. For API, I added OpenAI completions. The headers, this is just what I told you. And right here, I added my model, which is DeepSeek. Now on ID, I need to add this ID that I see right here. And I have to say on which provider I want it. So I do just colon and then the name of the provider. In this case, it is just like if you were calling the the provider via the API like this. So just go to view code, and as you can see, if I'm using Novita, then this is the model that I'm using. So once that is done, you just give it a name and you fill out the context window that you want to use with this one. Now, in this case, this one right here, it has a million token context window, so that is great. So I'm just going to save this, and now I'm going to be able to just open Pi, do /model, and as you can see, I have DeepSeek V4 Pro Novita now available, and I can start querying it. So now that I have it right here, I'm going to ask it to build a web application and see how it does. All right, so let's get right into that. All right, so just very quickly to show you exactly how I asked Pi or DeepSeek to build this, I sent this very detailed prompt asking it to build a browser-based code playground with the layout, editors, and live preview. And it should be persistent, so it should autosave on all these 3 editors of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, kind of like what you have in Code Sandbox or something like that. And yeah, just so if you want to read the full prompt, it's right here. You feel free to pause the video. And then it went on and built the whole thing really quickly. It really didn't take that long. It took probably like 5 minutes tops. And now it is actually available. So if I go right here and I open the file, you'll see that here it is. So I have my code playground here in HTML, here in CSS, here in JavaScript, and it seems to be working correctly. So let's see if I change this. There you go, left, and there you go, center. Perfect, and it works. It is reactive. I can reset it. I can also change right here my code, so I can do hello world 2. Seems to be working perfectly. So there you go. And there you go. So, I mean, of course, this is not a very thorough test of the coding abilities of this AI model. I feel like the more thorough tests are the actual benchmarks that we just went over, and that showed that this model is very comparable to GPT-5.5, GPT-5.4, Opus 4.7, and the rest of the open source models, such as Kimi, GLM, and Minimax. So I think that it is amazing that the open source models are catching up to the closed source models at such a fast speed, and they are actually comparable in quality, but at the same time, they are a tiny fraction of the price. So, I mean, you can have DeepSeek for 10% of what you would pay for models like GPT-5.5, and I find that incredible. So if you are running GPT-5.5 or Opus 4.7 through an API, be it for an application that you have developed or your coding assistant, you can definitely just switch to open source models and save a lot of money. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I think that this is a very important and very interesting time to be alive, and to experience this shift towards open source is very fun for me. So if you have any questions or any thoughts, or you have any opinions or disagree with me, feel free to post it in the comments. I'll be very happy to read that. So thanks a lot, and I will see you in the next one.